Well, thank you so much. And I guess we'll get started now. So thank you again so much for joining us. Welcome to Friday Digest. As people are coming in again, please type your name and let us know where you're joining from. My name is Kristen Harbeson. I'm political director for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and welcome to Friday Digest. What your being here speaks to the power of our community and to the commitment to a healthy environment for everyone in Maryland. Our goal with Friday Digest is to provide you with the information, tools, and resources to be an informed advocate. Our agenda is driven by your interests, so please don't hesitate to contact us with suggestions for what you'd like to hear. And the easiest way to do this is through the survey that you'll see at the end of this session. And again, as you're joining, please type your name in and let us know where you're coming from. And please also feel free to type your questions in the chat throughout the episode or through the Q&A box. And we'll do what we can to get to as many of those questions as we can. So today we're going to talk about funding to address the challenges that climate change brings to Maryland. And before introducing our guests today, I'm going to provide just a brief overview. We often hear the advice to follow the money. And so we wanted to do just that. There have been a lot of conversations this session about the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, or SEIF, that supports our state's climate programs. There are two main sources of funds into the SEIF. The first is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a multi-state cap and invest program that aims to reduce emissions from the power sector with dividends paid to the participating states to support energy efficiency improvements. The second, which is what we're going to focus on today, are called alternative compliance payments, or ACPs. When utilities are not able to meet the state's renewable energy targets, they make an alternative compliance payment. Funds from these ACPs are deposited into the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. But the question we have today is, how does this get to you, the individual Marylander? And today we are joined by two guests who will describe the programs and how these programs help ratepayers and the environment. Please join me in welcoming Evie Schwartz, the Division Director of Energy Programs and Partnerships at the Maryland Energy Administration, and Ruth Norton, who's the President and CEO of Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. So thank you both so much for joining us. And Evie, we'll start with
Kristen, I just want to say my apologies to all for having to be off camera as I'm in transit on the way to testify in Annapolis. So apologies, but thank you.
Oh, of course. And we know that I've worked with you for a long time and I know how busy you are. And so appreciate your service and your time being here. Evie, we'll start with you. First, can you tell us a little bit about the Maryland Energy Administration and what your job entails? How does MEA engage with partners around the state?
Sure. So the Maryland Energy Administration is our state's energy office. And our main mission is to promote affordable, reliable, clean energy in a just and equitable manner. There's two main levers that we pull to do that. We have folks who focus on the policy side, how to advise the governor, how to advise the legislature on a policy statewide. But we also have a lot of staff who focus on delivering incentive programs and making sure those funds are used wisely, efficiently, and effectively to benefit Marylanders. So I focus mostly on the program side. Of course, it's impossible to divorce the two, so there's always integration. But a lot of today's conversation, I think, is about those dollars and how they're deployed across the state. In terms of like my day to day, it's similar to any job in the public or private sector. I'm leading change internally within the agency to make sure that we're delivering effective and efficient programs and that they're benefiting Marylanders, and that each and every single one of those programs and each and every single one of those dollars is used wisely. So in terms of the different types of programs, there's some programs that are what we call our direct-to-consumer rebate programs. That means as an individual family, you can apply for that rebate, whether that's to help you install solar on your home, whether that's to install EV charging at home, or whether that's to install a battery. Those are rebates that you can log into a portal and directly apply for the funds. There are other grants that we do through a competitive process where we award larger grants and we work with other partners, whether that's a local government or a nonprofit or a school district or even another state agency, we will give out a larger chunk of funds through a competitive award making process. And then it's really the partner who's delivering those benefits directly to you rather than MEA. So you may or may not know that when you're working on, if you're benefiting from one of their programs, you may know that MEA dollars are behind it, but you may not know that MEA dollars are behind it. But that's also an important part of the puzzle when we talk about the impact of the SEIF. And I think there's a common misperception as well that that MEA is directly working on all of these programs. We also partner with a lot of other state agencies and support their work because it's not just MEA that cares about energy. Energy touches the entire state. It touches our transportation sector. It touches our climate change programs. It touches and so it touches energy bill assistance through the Department of Human Services. And so those agencies are also a really important part of the puzzle.
So MEA is sort of, MEA is an engine behind a lot of the different things that are happening from the state agencies across, which is great. So how do you see
part two of that question, I guess, was the engaging with partners. So I can speak to that from a formal side and an informal side. Formally, we have an advisory council that was established by Governor Moore's executive order. We also participate in many task forces across the state. We issue formal written requests for information, which is an opportunity to provide feedback on a written basis. And we host webinars. But there's also all of the myriads of informal ways that we engage with the public, whether through the individual interactions every day with the recipients of our rebates or recipients of our grants, or whether that's attending community events, whether that's joining the webinar today, thank you, LCV, or all sorts of different coalitions that we participate in across the state.
Great. Thank you. So could you talk a little bit about what the impact of MEA programs are around the state? I know that you've been working in and around, even before you joined MEA, you were a grantee, I understand, from MEA programs. Can you talk about some of the stories from your experience about how the state funding has made the difference between a project? I'm thinking especially sort of the energy projects, how this has been the difference between a project happening or not happening.
Sure. So yeah, the SEIF is definitely very personal for me. I spent more than a decade as a grantee implementing MEA dollars. I knocked on doors. I spoke individually to households every day. I helped to make sure on the implementation side. And now I get to work on the administration side, overseeing a variety of our grant programs. So it's definitely very personal. And as Kristen emphasized, it's about people and planet. Those things are not in conflict. They happen together. We want to save money. We want to generate clean energy in state. We want to cut greenhouse gas emissions, and we want to improve resilience. So I guess if we want to speak through some examples, I mentioned the rebates that you can apply for directly. That's a very direct way to save money if you install solar on your own home. And we have done the math. I mean, we know that $7,500 grant through the Maryland Solar Access Program is a make or break rebate on being able to afford to install that solar system and being able to achieve at least a 20% savings. We don't want anyone to install solar and then be saddled with more debt for the long term. The goal is to save money. So those rebates are super important, super impactful. It's also really, Ruth Ann's going to talk more about, I'm not going to steal her thunder. So I'll let Ruth Ann talk about the other kinds of upgrades to homes that our grants to nonprofits are supporting and how she combines those with other grants to make a difference. I also want to talk about some of the more intangible benefits of some of our programs that you can't necessarily measure the same as a dollar saved or a ton of carbon reduced from the atmosphere. But there's also intangible benefits. When we put solar on a school, the thing that's so amazing is when you walk through that school building and you can see that solar panels and it's part of the curriculum and the kids see the solar system, they see the heat pumps. It's designed to be visible. There's an intangible educational benefit. There's an intangible benefit for the parents as well when they visit the school. And I can't capture that on paper, but I really encourage, it's really amazing when you get to walk through one of those schools. And I'm really excited as well to see that as a state, we're going to be putting solar on parking lots around the state, at the airport, and all across the state. And that is also going to be another very visible way to show solar statewide and change hearts and minds. So I think that's just as important as the bill savings and the greenhouse gas emissions.
And all of that is made possible because of the SEIF and specifically the ACPs?
Yes, specifically the ACPs. The ACPs touch every sector. They touch buildings, they touch transportation, they touch power. They also touch every kind of site. We have programs that touch single family homes, multifamily buildings, school buildings, local government buildings, nonprofits, faith-based, tons of commercial, and every kind of technology. There's energy efficiency projects from the SEIF, there's solar, there's wind, there's geothermal energy, and again, there's also the vehicle side. There's infrastructure for transportation as well as electric vehicles. So those are, and all sorts of audiences, right? Individual households are benefiting. Our governments are able to meet their operating costs and be able to keep the lights on for us and have funding for other things. And all of that, yeah, all of that is because of the ACP dollars. It's a jigsaw puzzle patchwork of programs on purpose. You can't achieve all of your goals with just one program.
Great. Thank you for that. So I'm going to turn actually to Ruth Ann because one of the things you talked about was working with nonprofits to continue that direct service. I'm going to, again, following the money down to GHHI and the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. Ruth Ann, again, thank you so much for being here. We know you're in transit on your way to fight the good fight. Can you talk a little bit about GHHI and the programs that you implement that use SEIF funds?
Yeah, and sure. And let me just tell you what a pleasure and honor to be with Evie, just a stalwart. And MEA is the mothership of all of this, right, to help pull in with DHCD and MDE and others. In the end, Kristen, this is about the human beings, the citizens and the residents of Maryland. And so GHHI works at the intersection of climate, health, and housing. To take what's called a whole house approach, where we're looking at human health and the health of structures. And what we are doing is aligning, braiding, and coordinating resources, a critical component of which, the linchpin, I believe, is the SEIF funds and the energy funds that have so much to do with the three things that are keeping Americans up at night right now, and especially here in Maryland: housing affordability, healthcare cost, and energy cost. And by taking the SEIF dollars, and especially the benefit that we get from the ACP dollars, down to programs that allow us to create an energy efficiency and a clean energy environment in homes, we're doing a lot of things. We are lowering demonstrably well-vetted data on lowering the incidence of emergency room visits and hospitalizations, not only for children, but for adults. We are improving that aspect of extreme heat and extreme cold, which has such a bearing on the health of older adults, especially. But we're also getting to affordability. When we are able to use these grant dollars, we're improving that efficiency and consumption, and in many times coming out on a better economic scale for the affordability of energy. But through these dollars, all of what supports them and aligns with them also is lowering maintenance costs. What we know is increasing housing value and therefore increasing intergenerational wealth transfer for low-income neighborhoods and for individuals who might otherwise have to flee their home, abandon their home, and move. And so in doing that, we're doing wealth building, but for things that really matter too. A kid who's not in the emergency room because the particulate level coming out of their current appliances are, heating and cooling, or that's happening. If they're in the emergency room, they're not in the classroom. And asthma is the number one reason kids miss school, and the number one reason that especially wage earners that are hourly can't get to work is trying to care for sick kids at home. 40% of all hospitalizations for asthma come from indoor air quality and lousy housing conditions. SEIF is a direct hit in a positive way to change that. So what we know is we're getting kids in the classroom healthy and ready to learn. We're allowing older adults to age in place with dignity, health, and wealth building. We also know that housing stability increases threefold in that. And we get to all of these other, sort of as Evie was getting to, these other co-benefits that come from that. I mean, we do not think enough about the stress that energy inefficiency and what it causes to the envelope of the house and other things that then deteriorate in the house versus investing in that home, getting it more climate resilient, and increasing that housing stability and the value of housing, it resonates in our classrooms, in our workplaces, and in our communities in terms of housing stability. And this is all data. That isn't a theory. This is reality for people. Getting this across for low and moderate income families across the state is a pathway to actually live the mission, right, of Maryland right now, which is leave no one behind, and doing it at a betterment for taxpayers and for contributors on this. Like the utilities should be loving that we're getting these dollars, but so should taxpayers, because we are bettering the economic prospects and health of our citizens.
Thank you for that. That's so what I'm hearing you saying, Ruth Ann, if I can, is that so these dollars help to people to with and what Evie was talking about too, the energy efficiency programs, things that help reduce energy costs directly through home improvements and things like that. But also it's include when you're talking about affordability and cost of living, you're also reducing the cost of medical care, you're reducing the costs that the economic impact of missing work for especially for people who are maybe hourly workers and have less flexibility with time off. So this is really a holistic, you talk about a whole house approach, but you're talking about really the SEIF is a whole life approach
It
to a
is.
family and a community.
Yeah, I mean, SEIF directly saves Medicaid dollars. SEIF directly improves the use of education dollars, just right there on an interagency use of taxpayer dollars and use of ratepayer dollars, right? And looking at the highest and best purpose. And what I will say to everyone who ought to be paying attention to this and supporting every good thing that MEA is doing, is that without these dollars, many of these houses would be deferred, because if you can't address those fundamental issues because those dollars are not there, so many other problems happen in houses. Houses get deferred. And in fact, human beings and the quality of life not only get deferred, but they have material impacts. So I would look at the positives of this in economically. It's a powerful engine of how SEIF is used in Maryland.
I think it's also important to recognize that when we pay into our rates, there are certain folks who are paying more than their fair share. And ACP dollars are written in statute to send more of the dollars back to the people who are saddled with that unfair share. So
100%.
100%. Yeah. So the benefits are going to people that need it the most. There are some programs that are for every household. There are some programs, again, that affect every local government and school district, but there are other programs that are specifically earmarked in law to ensure that we are sending those dollars back to people who are not paying more than their fair share.
Yeah, we started to fight that fight 5 or 6 years ago with Laura Charkoudian, looking at Empower dollars and looking at that. And at that time, to just bring a clearer point to Evie's point here, that low-income families were putting $50 million in and getting back $28 million of services, and the highest income families were putting in $100 million and getting 130 of the upper income families. That started to change a lot. The lens on this has started to change. The data, and with MEA, like looking at this, and DHCD looking at it, the legislature looking at it, and advocates and communities, I think everyone wants fair play, right? And we can't even talk about creating equitable pathways without programs like this. So such a great illustration, great point.
And it's such a pleasure to get to work with our state partners, with groups like with Ruth Ann and groups like GHHI on these issues of environmental justice, which are also important economic justice. And I think that for people who tune in regularly to these Friday Digests, you'll hear that emphasis on helping low and moderate income Marylanders, those in overburdened and underserved communities, is a running theme through most of the work that we're all doing together, in trying to make sure that we are able to, as Ruth Ann talked about, uh, leaving no one behind. That, as our governor is famous for saying, like that is something that I think we're all working really hard on. And I wonder whether either of you can talk about, like, again, I want to make this as human as possible for people who may be less familiar with some of the programs that MEA supports, that GHHI is helping. Do you have any sort of examples of lives that have been changed?
Yeah, let me tell you, and I don't know if Evie was on the site visit for this. MEA was on the site visit recently, along with Senator Brooks and others. But we went to the home of Wanda Kelly, a longtime nurse who, at a fairly young age for having a stroke, had a series of multiple strokes and was in a home where she was living with the issues of extreme heat and extreme cold. And the particulate level in her home became critically more important to her health and recovery. Um, and with MEA dollars, we were able to address these issues so that she and her husband wouldn't lose their home, but could stay in their home, where we brought other dollars in through partnerships that when Evie was at Civic Works, housing upgrade benefits to seniors, and other dollars to bring together to make uh, the mobility and prevent injury and all the other good things that we do when we're looking holistically. But what Corliss Billups, a long-serving state employee, when she retired, again, did not have the working mechanicals for heat and cold and had to go to her third floor to live in the winter because it was so cold on the first and second floors of her home, and then had to live down in the basement during the summer because it's the only place she could get cool. And her grandson was not even allowed to come in the house because of the high asthmatic triggers. And these funds, two families were able to not only improve health and improve the just the comfort and quality of life, but allowed them to hold on to those assets that they had worked so long for. And I think, we have to understand the SEIF's role, MEA's role, um, in the issue of housing affordability and in the issue of housing stability and maintenance costs. All of these things are interconnected. And I could go on forever talking about the number of children where we get a referral, whether it's from WellPoint or MedStar or Hopkins, and a kid has hit the emergency room for asthma. A typical child in the Baltimore region, for example, who hits the emergency room once for asthma will hit it 3 times, will be hospitalized 2 times a year often. And we bring that quotient to zero because of energy dollars and clean energy dollars that allow us to lower that particulate, improve indoor air quality. That's lives. And
That's amazing, Ruth
that's
Ann.
lives.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
We did get a question from in the chat about how does this, an alternative to Evie, what are there programs that help renters? Because Ruth Ann was talking a lot about the home ownership, but a
Yeah.
lot of Marylanders, especially lower income Marylanders, rent. So
Right.
how does this reach them?
Yes. Great. I get to talk about community solar. So community solar, um, you can subscribe as an individual household, whether you're a renter, whether you're owner, you can subscribe to a community solar project with a few hundred of your neighbors and receive the same exact bill credits on your bill as if that solar was on your own house. And I love our community solar program at MEA that we incentivize for more community solar to get built around the state. This is one of the programs that talked about co-benefits, hits several goals. It hits in-state clean generation. There's 175 megawatts of solar I think we've done in the last 2 years of community solar. And it also benefits tons of households. I think it's about 20,000 households that will benefit from that 175 megawatts of solar. And as an individual, income eligible folks are getting 25% savings and beyond. Anybody can get 10% savings and beyond is pretty typical. So community solar is a huge impact, and this is again a place where we can hit a lot of our goals with one program. And the MEA incentives, without the MEA incentives, there would be some community solar projects being built, not as many, and mostly the incentive allows us to increase the savings, the amount of savings that an individual household can get by subscribing. That's the purpose of the MEA grants.
That's great. I mean, I love this program and I love listening to the two of you talking about all the benefits of ACP dollars and SEIF dollars and really making it effective, how it affects individuals, which is what we were hoping to draw out in this program. But I'll give each of you, it's like, I think for in closing, like we had some questions about how can we be the most effective in fighting for these programs. So I'd say each of you have, one or two sentences of what you think are the participants in the Zoom should know so that they can best communicate the importance of these programs and of ACP dollars. What would you want the takeaway to be as people are going to talk to their legislators?
Well, I'll go first, and
Oh,
Oh,
we leave it there.
oh, I think we lost Ruth Ann for a second. Evie, do you have a?
Well,
do not sleep
oh.
on the legislature.
Oh,
Sorry. Did I get?
Ruth Ann, I think we lost you for a minute.
Yeah, somebody tried to call in. I think that happened. But what I was going to say really quickly is these dollars translate directly into people's health, into opportunity, and to wealth. And when we drive through and want neighborhoods improved, these are critical linchpin dollars for that. But the taxpayer, the ratepayer gets so much more back, as does the family. And what I would say to everyone is don't sleep on the legislature, all people who we respect, that they are understanding the common sense of funding the SEIF, funding the programs for MEA and DHCD, and also my friends at the Clean Energy Center who benefit in so much innovation from SEIF. We all have to activate to get this paid attention to and make sure we have legislative support.
Great, I appreciate that. Evie, any closing thoughts?
I would emphasize that there's short term and long term, that both are important. I think there's a there's pressure to focus on the immediate term and how do we provide relief to bills today, and that is a huge part of the puzzle. There's also long term, and so I want to make sure that we continue to fund programs that we invest in bill assistance for immediate relief, but we also invest in energy efficiency. We also invest in solar, that we also invest in the infrastructure, because that's going to save people money in the long term and save our environment in the long term. And we need to invest in those dollars today to see those benefits tomorrow. So I would try to emphasize both of those sides of the coin when you're talking to legislators.
And I think that's a great place to stop. And I cannot thank you both enough. Thank you, Evie and Ruth Ann, for being with us. That's all the time we've got today. And to our audience, thank you for joining and for your support in our work. You can take action on the SEIF and other bills by clicking on a link in the chat. And if you don't already, we hope you'll follow us here on Facebook or on Instagram, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Friday Digest. There's also a rally on Tuesday next week in Annapolis for another important priority, the Cherish Act, which we've been talking about quite a bit this session. And more details on that are in the chat. And in the meantime, please sign up for our emails, follow us on social media. We have a big week ahead. We're coming into the final turn of legislative session. And finally, we invite you to fill out our short 5-question survey, which should be in the chat now. Thank you again so much, Evie, Ruth Ann, and to all of you for joining, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, everybody.